Yes, and welcome formally to the latest event in our Spotlight on Africa conference series, where we've been taking a closer look at the political, the economic, and the development prospects of a key African partner to the United States. And today it's the turn of Ghana. And it's an opportune moment to look at Ghana, which recently celebrated only last month its 60th anniversary as an independent nation, and which has a new administration just taking office at the turn of this year, a new administration with new ideas, and here to share them with you for the first time this afternoon. So we're very excited to be here this afternoon. Our Spotlight on Africa series is an opportunity for us here at CSIS to bring together a range of political figures, business leaders, and independent analysts to take a deep dive and a forward-looking examination of challenges, constraints, and most importantly, opportunities in growth, investment, governance, and social development. And I'd like to acknowledge, before we start, the generous support of the founding sponsors of this series, the Chevron Corporation and Bechtel Corporation. Here in the United States, the media and other commentators are busily brushing up and preparing their assessments of the first 100 days of this administration here in Washington. And meanwhile, a similar exercise has been taking place in Ghana, slightly ahead of us, where President Nana Akufo-Addo and the new Patriotic Party won power in December. And so far, the verdicts have been largely positive. Ghana overcame a highly contested election period, and it did so peacefully. And not for the first time either. Ghana really does set the continental pace in terms of democratic development, dating all the way back to the early 1990s when Jerry Rawlings abandoned military rule and put Ghana on the path to multi-party democracy. And now, today, these democratic norms are fully embedded. Following December's election, the transition from NDC to NPP government was relatively seamless. Indeed, you could argue rather more tranquil than our own here in the US. Certainly the key cabinet appointments were made with less fuss and incident. And the new government has been getting down to business and working at an impressive tempo. The Akufo-Addo administration inherits a decidedly mixed economic outlook. On the one hand, the forecasts are bullish, suggesting stronger real GDP growth of 6.7%, around that margin for 2017, and a gradual fall in inflation, which has been a source of concern for some years now in Ghana. However, the government faces a set of major economic challenges, including high public debt, weak foreign direct investment, and also a pressure to deliver on campaign promises that were made to boost industrialization, to generate jobs, and others besides. Fiscal space is also limited by the need to stay within the prudent spending limits set by the terms of the IMF's lending arrangement negotiated back in 2015. Ghana is a valued partner of the United States and has been for many decades, and the two countries enjoy a warm bilateral relationship. Ghana is a stellar development partner. It's one of the few countries, for example, to receive 2 compacts from the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And Ghana really has been the center of the previous Obama administration's major development initiatives globally and also in Africa, including Power Africa and Feed the Future. It's no coincidence that Ghana was the destination that President Obama chose to make his first visit to sub-Saharan Africa as president back in 2009, when in a speech to Parliament he praised the democratic example Ghana had set to the rest of the continent. It remains to be seen where Ghana will fit into our new administration's agenda, but I really hope that this visit can provide a platform for Ghana to make a strong case for renewed, indeed elevated attention, not only for Ghana but for Africa as a whole, as a champion for Africa and the African continent. So I'm delighted to welcome our keynote speaker this afternoon, Ghana's Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Dr. Bawumia exemplifies, I think, the strong technocratic caliber of Ghana's new cabinet, Before entering politics, he was a banker and economist. He served as the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, a position that placed him at the forefront of managing Ghana's key economic relationships with the outside world, including the tricky relationship with the World Bank and IMF, and also drafting the financial aspects of the deal that delivered Ghana's first MCC compact. Dr. Bawumia entered politics at the highest level in 2008 when he was running mate for Nana Akufo-Addo's presidential bid. While he was unsuccessful then, and again in 2012, it was third time lucky in 2016. So welcome, and welcome the rest of your delegation. And it's my pleasure to turn the podium over to you. Please join me in welcoming Vice President Bawumia.
Thank you very much. Richard, I am most grateful for this opportunity, and I thank all of you for making the time to be here. We arrived here about 2 hours ago, and so it's good that we are getting this out of the way before we fall asleep. As you've just heard, we are the new government in Ghana, the government of Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and the New Patriotic Party. We've been in office just about 102 days now. After a very hard-fought election on December 16th, Ghana really re-established or deepened its credentials as a very stable democracy. We had a very peaceful transition of power from the party of another government, the NDC, the incumbent, to a new government. And Ghana has built on that tradition with governments changing hands quite peacefully. And so we did have a very peaceful transition. But I think the vote in Ghana was really a vote that was a vote for change. That is how we saw it. We saw it as a major boost because historically our elections have been fairly close, very, very close, 50.7 to 48, 49, 0.3, and that sort of result. But this particular election, we had a bit of a gap between us and the incumbent government. 275 seats in parliament, we won 169. And so there was a mandate, we interpreted it, for change. And that mandate for change was really against the backdrop of difficult economic circumstances. You saw the economic growth slowing down, unemployment going up, the fiscal finances, public finances, were in pretty bad shape. The deficit for the year 2016 was close to 9%, as against a target of close to 5%. And so we had quite significant challenges to deal with. And against this background, Ghanaians were yearning for a government that will come and really do the people's business and put the economy back on a path of stability. We took this mandate very seriously. Over the last 100 days, we've been at work. We've promised Ghanaians in the campaign that we were going to make Ghana the most business-friendly and the most people-friendly economy on the continent of Africa. That was essentially the message that we went to the country with. And so the people expect us to deliver on this message. But to make Ghana the most business-friendly and the most people-friendly economy in Africa, you really have to start by getting the economy right, by getting the country back onto a path of fiscal consolidation and making sure macroeconomy stability is in place. Without that, it's very, very difficult to deliver on anything else. And that really is the bedrock that will enable the private sector to grow. And this is where growth is going to come from. So it was very clear to us when we got into government that fiscal consolidation was very critical, and we set about trying to do exactly that. First of all, we had to lower the deficit, and in the context of the first budget, we passed a budget that is projected to bring the deficit down from the 9% or so that we inherited to 6.5% this year. Of course, in getting there, we've had to take some difficult decisions. And one of those decisions which allowed us the space to operate in Ghana was to slay a sacred cow, which had to do with earmarked funds or statutory payments. We had a situation which had arisen over the years in Ghana where you had three expenditure items: wages, interest rates, and statutory payments. The three combined in the budget exceeded the total revenue of government. And so basically, for government to do anything else, you just had to continue borrowing. We thought that was not sustainable. It was very difficult to cut these earmarked funds. Many governments had tried over the years to tackle this matter, and they had not really done so. But we thought right off the bat we needed to tackle the matter, and we tackled it. We limited the amount of revenue that would go to statutory funds to 25%. And that is what we did in this budget. And that suddenly created us some space. In terms of government administration, we also cut it by 30%. You saw a reduction from 5.8 billion Ghana cedis in 2016 to 4.1. That is a significant reduction of about the order of some $400 million in government administrative expenditure, and so on. So we began trying to stabilize the economy, but we also knew that we needed to move this economy from one which is focused on taxation to one which is focused on production. The nature of the macro before was such that high fiscal deficits led to higher and higher taxes. And the higher taxes were a major disincentive to production. So we had promised that we would reduce taxes, which would give an incentive to businesses to produce. As we said, we wanted to be the most business-friendly economy. So we set about, abolishing a number of taxes, and the Minister of Finance read the first budget on March 2nd and abolished many taxes. In fact, he became known as the abolisher-in-chief as a result. He abolished the excise duty on petroleum, abolished the 1% special import duty levy, the 17.5% VAT on domestic airline tickets, which were hurting our airline industry, the 17.5% VAT on financial services, the 17.5% VAT on selected import medicines, and the 5% VAT on real estate sales to get our mortgage market moving. We also reduced a number of levies and basically brought a lot of stimulus to the private sector. About 1 billion cedis worth of taxes, which is about $250 million, were granted in this particular budget, and that was very, very significant. We also took a very deliberate decision because Ghana's debt had risen to close to 73% of GDP. From around 32% 8 years ago. So we've seen a major increase in the debt. And so we decided deliberately not to go to the sovereign bond market this year. We had been seeing governments going and borrowing year after year after year, but we wanted to signal that that cycle needed to stop. And so we deliberately did not go to the sovereign bond market this year. Rather, what we are doing is to try to reprofile Ghana's debt and try to make sure that we move the short-term maturities to longer term and also replace more expensive debt with less expensive debt. So we are trying to manage the debt and these liabilities. And the process started a few weeks ago, and where we issued a CD-denominated bond, and we had a lot of interest from the private sector, and I think it is a major vote of confidence in the Ghanaian economy that we had about $2.25 billion worth of purchases of the bond that was issued. And we had bonds that went up to 15-year maturities for the first time in our history. So the reprofiling of the debt will reduce our interest payments, and we hope to do more later this year. So we are seeing some confidence coming back into the economy, and this confidence is seen also in the appreciation of the currency. The currency has strengthened. Year to date, we've seen an appreciation, and it is all coming down to the restored confidence in the economy. Ghana, in these last 100 days, has also reached out to Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire is the world's, between Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, we control almost 2/3, really, of the world's cocoa production. And we thought we needed to talk to one another and make sure that we can have an impact on the volatility of cocoa prices in the world. After all, if OPEC can do it, why can't COPEC? So in our own little way, we've reached out to Côte d'Ivoire, and we've had our little understanding of how to deal with the market. But we've made a major push in the area of agriculture. The president today launched our flagship agricultural policy, which is planting for food and jobs. And we're making sure fertilizer access is there for the farmers. Fertilizer prices have come down by 50%. We've hired about 1,200 extension officers for farmers, to help farmers. And we are going to see a major increase in agricultural output. Agriculture is really one of the key, areas of focus for this government. Because that is where we can make very, very quick wins and get there. In addition, we want to formalize the economy. Ghana's economy is highly informal, as in many other African economies. Individuals are not uniquely identified, and the address system is very, should I say, informal. In many places, if you want to find somebody's house, you'd have to say, well, find the blue kiosk. And when you turn left, you'd see the rice seller on the right. And if the rice seller doesn't show up for that day, you are in trouble. You are in big trouble. So we said no. I mean, in a country, for the economy to move, you need to be able to uniquely identify everybody. You need to. I mean, over here in the US, everybody has a social security number. And I'm telling you, I mean, if the social security numbers disappeared overnight, tomorrow there will be chaos in the United States. There would be chaos. I mean, if you couldn't find anybody's social security number, it's so critical, so fundamental to everything that you do. And we need a similar system. And we need, similarly, address systems. Every property has to be uniquely identified. And similarly, if you woke up tomorrow and the addresses in the United States disappear, there will be chaos. completely. And so these are pieces of soft infrastructure that we have to put in place, and that every country that wants to modernize has to put in place. We've been at it for 60 years since independence, and we haven't put this in place. But our government is going to put these two pieces of soft infrastructure in place this year. So we are starting off with the digital addressing system. Thankfully, when you come late to technology, you can leapfrog. So we are going to take advantage and leapfrog and install a digital addressing system, because with satellite technology and Google Maps and everything now, we will be able to uniquely identify every spot in the landmass of Ghana, uniquely. And so the process has begun, procurement process has begun, open tender process, as we want to do for everything. And we expect to launch this digital addressing system in Ghana in July, August, that window. And we will get that out of the way, and we think it will be a major boost to the economy once every property can be uniquely identified. And once we launch the unique address system, then we'll follow that up this year with the unique ID, national ID for everybody. And that, again, we are sequencing it this way so that when you go to register for the national ID, you will have your address, so that we have the pieces of information together. But these are two very critical elements in the formalization of the economy, which is very, very key to improving productivity, the tax net, and everything. So it is something that we are very, very keen to execute this year. In the area of energy has been one of the Achilles heels of this economy. And so we saw last year, in fact, and the years before, problems with electricity supply, shortages of electricity, and so on. The situation has improved a lot. In fact, as we speak today, the procurement of various generating contracts has resulted in an overcapacity in terms of the supply of electricity in Ghana. The only problem we have is that those contracts were procured at exorbitant prices. And so Ghana now has about the highest electricity prices in the West African sub-region. And so we've had to take a step back and look at how to address the long-term issues, because the state-owned enterprises in the energy sector have very poor balance sheets. And so we've got to look at the rationalization of this. Fundamentally, the debts in the energy sector we are going to have to deal with. We have about $2.4 billion of debt in the energy sector. We intend to issue a 15-year bond, which is going to be collateralized against proceeds of taxes that are specifically electricity related and petroleum related, so that we have put in place an energy sector levy, and that levy will be yielding this year some $500 million. So this is the sort of annual intake we expect to get from that levy, and we will collateralize the 15-year bond against that levy, which is about $500 million, $400 to $500 million, and then that will take care of that problem. But in taking care of that problem, we want to also make sure it doesn't recur. So you've got to undertake some fundamental reforms, and in fact, part of the MCC compact that we are going to implement this year deals with the heart of the problem, which is the distribution end as well, in terms of the collection of the revenues and making sure that all the generators and distributors along that chain get their share. So we're doing a cash waterfall mechanism which will make sure that happens. But we've undertaken a review of the power purchase agreements that are in Ghana, and we've realized that a lot of them really should not, really start because the pricing is just obnoxious. So we are reviewing that. But more importantly, we are trying to move Ghana away from a reliance on thermal energy to solar energy. We want to move away from oil to the sun. We have a lot of sun in Ghana. And so this policy decision has been taken. There are not going to be any new power purchase agreements in thermal energy. Any power agreement in Ghana henceforth has to be in renewable energy. So that decision has been taken, and we are implementing it. Secondly, we are asking that all government institutions, hospitals, schools, universities, police, military, all of them should move towards solar power. And so we are moving in that direction to set an example, and we expect very, very, very significant savings. In addition, we want transparency in the allocation of the oil blocks. Oil blocks, we are an oil-producing country, but the allocation of oil blocks thus far has been very opaque. And so the president has asked, a team of experts has been put together to work with the Petroleum Commission to develop regulations for the transparent allocation of petroleum blocks as provided by law. And I think this transparency will help investment in the energy sector. So we expect to see some major changes in the energy sector soon. We have also, as a government, since we got into office, moved very quickly to complete the setting up of governments. The government machinery is now pretty much in place. We've completed the appointment of ministers within 6 weeks of coming into office. All the ministers have declared their assets. Which is very, very, very important. It's very, very important that we make sure that happens. We've put in place a very first-class economic management team. I would even say world-class, because the Minister of Finance, the very known Wall Street banker, investment banker, really high achiever. The former Minister of Finance, who is deputy chair, vice chair of the economic management team, Yao Safo-Mafu, he was voted at one time the best finance minister in Africa by the World Economic Forum, and many others. They're just a solid, capable group of individuals who have come together to manage the team. And we meet every week without fail. And so we have a laser-eyed focus on the economy, and we are taking decisions and making sure we monitor what is going on. We have established a delivery unit, which is akin to what Tony Blair did in Downing Street during his time. We had a meeting with him and learned a lot from him, to basically, because at the end of the day, you can have some of the best plans in place, but if you don't follow on the implementation, that is really where we tend to fall short. And that is what the delivery unit is supposed to be. But thankfully, we have a president in Nana Akufo-Addo who is very much of a taskmaster. At the last cabinet meeting we finished was around 2:30 a.m. and not many, I don't think many cabinets in the world meet up to 2:30 a.m. He just wants to get things done, and for us to follow through with what we have promised. So we are doing that. We've also moved on very quickly to make sure that government is not seen as a place where you come for gravy and leave. One of the areas in terms of perks that historically government officials tend to get when you get into office as a minister, they buy you a new V8 Land Cruiser. And then when you are leaving office, you get to buy it. We thought that was a waste of money. So we've cancelled no purchases of new vehicles for ministers, and also the policy of sales of vehicles to ministers when they leave office has been abolished. This is why the minister is known as the abolisher in chief. So we've also focused on procurement matters. And we want to, because if you look at the issue of corruption, 99% of it is procurement related. And so if you can shine a light on the procurement process, then you can deal with issues of corruption. And so the Public Procurement Agency has undertaking a policy, and from June this year, they would be in e-procurement mode, which means that every procurement will have a unique ID, and you can follow it online, what stage it is at, and so on. So we can all see what is happening along the lines to each procurement process that is taking place, and we believe that will bring in a lot of transparency. And they have also established a value for money unit, which means that every procurement will have a value for money analysis attached to it. And so these are some of the things that we are doing to try to bring transparency and accountability. But you have to have the prosecutorial part of it as well. And so we are establishing an office for a special prosecutor on corruption, an independent office of a special prosecutor on corruption. That law is going through, will go through Parliament soon, and I'm sure we will hear a lot. They will be quite busy, I'm sure. So it's very, very important that you cannot only talk about corruption, but you have to have a deterrence. The wrongs that are done have to be punished. Otherwise, people will keep repeating those wrongs. And so that is really one area that is very, very important for us. In the last 100 days, so much has happened in Ghana. We are beginning and working in partnership with the International Monetary Fund. We're beginning to reorient this economy back onto a path of fiscal consolidation. The private sector, we want the private sector to grow this economy, and so we are giving a lot of incentives for private sector growth. The public sector, one thing that I forgot to mention as far as our rationalization of the public sector, when we came in, we said, well, let us see if all the workers on government payroll actually exist. So we did a biometric registration. In fact, it was started in October 2016 for the pensions, and 26,000 didn't show up. Then we added some this year up to March. We gave everybody a deadline up to March. If you are not there, you are taking off government payroll. 24,000 didn't show up. So we have a total of 50,000 people who are supposed to be on the payroll who we don't have their fingerprints. So maybe ghosts don't have fingerprints. So basically they've been taken off payroll, about 50,000 people. And that is going to save us about 300 million a year. So we have begun the process of transforming this economy. We want to do things without fear. We've got to do the things that will make this economy move and ensure that we have value for money in the area of our public finances. But we are very, very optimistic about going forward. It's been 100 days, and 2 days ago I had to give an account of the achievements of the government in 100 days. Thankfully, I was able to list 103 achievements. So, in 100 days. So we ended up with a slogan, one day, one achievement. And that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.